Bulavanaka, and welcome to the Drua Talk podcast. We have this off season. We just introduced it because in season we get someone better who's called Greg Clark, who does Clarky's Corner. So this
Yeah,
is me standing in, filling in for him.
we're not quite in the corner here
We're
though,
not,
Shane. So.
no, we're not. While Clark is off, he's enjoying the baguettes and the baguettes
Yeah,
in
look,
France.
he does a great job too.
It does a great job, and he had a pretty sad week last week, as you know, with the results of the rugby. In fact, it was a big week in the past 7 days since we last chatted, Mick, in the world of rugby. But before we get to the big Rugby World Cup, all the happenings at the Rugby World Cup, you and I were at Churchill Park yesterday.
Yeah, it was great to see the women's sevens going around there. Some good quality rugby was played, and they're obviously good sides. New Zealand, the two Aussie teams, France, US, and of course our Fijiana.
Yeah.
And you just forget when you go and watch a game live. You just forget how fit those players are.
Sevens.
Yeah, it's just a constant game. It was good. Some really good rugby played, and our girls did really well.
I noticed you timed your appearance at exactly at 1 p.m. Mick, at Churchill Park, and we have 3 matches next season kicking off at 1:05 p.m.
That's it.
So was that a little bit of you trying to see what the conditions were
early
like?
recce, early recce. No, to be fair, I got the timings wrong. I was working off 1:30 start, but daylight savings in New Zealand, see. So
Okay, right.
it was actually 12:30. So the old daylight saving trap got me.
Oh gosh. Well, and one word about the Fiji. How did you find the Fijiana team? How'd they go?
Oh, really good. I mean, they throw the ball around, like we know they throw the ball around, but they've got some individual players there that just run around players, and when they get into the open, they work hard over the ball too. They're a very physical team, and they look like they're really enjoying themselves when they play as well, like all the Fijians. So it was great to see yesterday.
Perfect. We're wishing them all the best. I think the final kicks off this afternoon.
Yeah.
Against an informed French team they were pretty good yesterday.
Well, the French team, good offload. Like we're a good offloading team, but the French team do it really well, and they stand in their tackles. They're strong players. They push the ball, and they've got a couple of pretty classy players there too. So that'll be a good challenge.
Yeah, it'll be fun. We'll catch that on TV, hopefully in a bit. All right, now back to that big weekend that was, Mick, and I want to talk about. We want to start off with something further out, which is before we come closer to home. Ireland versus South Africa, number 1 versus number 2 in the world, and they lived up to it, didn't they?
They did. Physicality was first class, and I think also for me anyway, is commend Ben O'Keefe. I thought he did a really good job at controlling those two teams.
It's a tough gig, especially that collision area and the.
Well, the collision area, we know both sides, in 1 and 2 in the world, and Ireland have shown over the last 2 or 3 years the way they've been approaching the breakdown and the aggression there. They attack the breakdown as well as ball carriers, so they win that battle as well. And we know what South Africa are like, and we know how brutal they were against the All Blacks in that warm-up game. And, so both sides going at each other at the breakdown, it's a tough game to ref.
Yeah.
And I thought Ben did a good job.
Did the result surprise you, or it wasn't a surprise, world number 1 winning, but it was a tight one.
No, look, I mean, we saw at the end there, the ball and the maul, that sort of thing. It was in there for a while before it popped out, but, another 30 seconds of play and maybe South Africa score, and so South Africa win. And I think when you've got 1 and 2 in the world going at it in a World Cup, you expect that sort of game. And Ireland got there in the end, and they'd be pretty happy with that. But I think if the two teams meet again, and we've talked about the possibility of teams meeting each other in the pool. Yeah. So we talked about France. All Blacks, that could be they could meet each other in the final, but we also now look at Ireland and South Africa, and that could be the same thing. So, but we obviously would like to think that our boys will be able to throw a spanner in that work. So.
Yeah, of course. If we have a say in it, absolutely, it'll be someone else in the final wearing the white and black of Fiji. Just you mentioned that last maul play that Ireland actually won the turnover, which got them to win the game. Just tell us who is working extra hard in that maul, defending that maul, and getting the turnover. I mean, is it all the forwards, or is there someone? Are the locks driving it particularly hard? What's going on there? Because we can't tell from sideline.
It's a good question. What's going on there? I think there's a lot of people asking that question. But what is going on is people having a red hot go, and it's probably the first defensive players that hit that maul that are able to disrupt the start. I think once the maul gets going, it's near impossible to stop.
Yeah, if it's set well,
and in most occasions it's 8 versus 5.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they start to get a bit of a go, and it'll be 8 versus 6. So it's those first 3 players from the defensive side that come and hit that maul.
Yeah.
If they hit it hard, they hit their spots right, they get in the little gaps, and they create an opportunity for the others to come in behind and hold that 8 that are coming. Then that's when the maul can slow down. And while you've got 8 players in a maul trying to work forward, it's not like a scrum.
Yeah.
They're not all set up with spines aligned and going through. So if you can get in there and disrupt the way they set up the maul, you have a chance.
Yeah.
But if you allow them to set the maul up, as we said, once it gets set and they start to get their spines aligned, and you can see the good mauls where they get their spines aligned and they work with each other and they shift and go. Versus if they're all trying to find their own...
In sort of different directions.
Yeah, so it's usually the first 3 defensive players. If they can get in and disrupt that set, it's hard to get that spine alignment for the attacking team. And I'd say so. I don't know who it was for the Irish team. You'd have to have a look at the video, but the first 3 players there that really hit that South Africa maul would be the guys that you'd give credit to.
Right. I mean, you mentioned that we've had a bit of a mauling ourselves early on in the early part of last season, 2023, Shaban saved Super Rugby Pacific season, and you mentioned in a couple of your press conferences that you wanted players at a certain place in ready to defend those, and we worked hard on that over the season, obviously, to improve that, and we did. But is that like, as you mentioned, is whoever gets in first and in the right place at the right time, right?
Yeah, it's the mix of technicality and aggression, and lots of times the most experienced players, and we're talking about 2 very experienced packs in Ireland and South Africa. When they come in and they hit, those first 3 guys come in and they hit nice and hard and solid and strong. Yeah. They hit the spots as well. Not only are they, not only do they get in the right areas, but they're getting in the right areas with real aggression.
Yeah.
And I think that's the challenge for us, for our players, was not only are we needing to be really hard and physical and hit hard, we need to be also technically correct. And so learning the 2 things, where's the seam, when they come around this way and they drive, and side set it up with a back lifter in the way, can you separate that seam? Can you get in there and create that gap? And if you can get in there, if that first person can get in there. But if you're learning it for the first time, it's how do I get in there? And not only how do I get in there, but how do I get in there aggressively and split it? It just takes a bit of time.
I mean, half a step and you could be deemed illegal, right? I mean,
the timing's very important, because we saw last year a couple of times for us, we knew what we wanted to do. We just got in there a bit early and we got penalised for being a bit early, but the players were seeing the space they wanted to hit, just they got their timing wrong. So I think that we can work through that, and we're learning that all the time, and our players are getting better. And obviously we've got 3 or 4 players that are fronting up in the Flying Fijians pack every week now that'll be getting benefit from being part of that process.
All right. Well, that's South Africa and Ireland for you, and good on Ireland, and South Africa not too far off the pace there, and I'm sure they'll be in towards the business end of the tournament in one way, shape, or form. The other big talking point of the rugby world was obviously the Wallabies and Wales. Result, they had to win that one. We all know the final score, 40 points to 6. The biggest scores against the Wallabies in a Rugby World Cup. I watched those heartbreaking scenes. What was it like for you watching guys like Samu Kerevi, Fraser McWright, like really, really emotional? I mean, I know we play against them.
Yeah, look, I don't. The fact that the Australian team, and I'm Australian, I think it's. I don't like seeing any players feel like that. It's just that moment after a game, and that's why, where we're interviewing players as they walk off the field and things like that. I'm old school.
Yeah.
You know, I know it makes for good TV, and I know that the TV people put the money in, and I'm all for that. But I think there's a human element as well where, you know, players, if they can just take some time to reflect and, you know, just allow that emotional stuff to come through.
The
you know,
real moment, right?
The player wants to get up there and he wants to speak so that he makes sense, and he wants to talk, and then they ask him, how are you feeling at the moment? Like, you know, what sort of question's that? I know what I'd be saying, you know, and I think they're the challenges. And then the player's trying to say, you know, and I saw poor old Dave Parecki, you know, they asked him, and he was just lost for words. Well, he's lost for words because it's an emotional time, and you've gone in, prepped, you know you need to step up, you've had a loss the week before, you know the game's on the line, you know your World Cup's possibly on the line, and then you go out and you don't perform. When you don't do that on purpose, and then you're disappointed. And you feel for them. But as I said, I feel for players that put in there and that happens to them. Yeah. You know, and of course, you know, when your expectations are at the start of the World Cup, you know, they probably expected to be in the quarterfinal like everybody else in Australia did. This, you know, it's obviously the first time they haven't pushed through. You know, we've got to do the job ourselves now in the next 2 weeks. But you know, I think the key there is everyone in Australia thinks we can do it, so we should believe in ourselves as well.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I think it's really disappointing for them, and but it's, you know, it may have, well, it definitely has, but people asking questions, and hopefully people can stay positive and work through that process. But it's, you know, like if you wanted to be now go the other side and be, you know, selfish and ruthless and cutthroat, it gave us a great opportunity now to make the quarterfinal. So, you know, where one thing is a letdown, there's someone else is going to benefit from us and from it. And if we do the right thing on Sunday morning, then that'll be us.
How would you, as a coach, give solace to the Wallabies players after those post-match scenes? So they actually learn from this and then, you know, use it obviously, you know, for the better moving forward.
Well, I think this is part of the coaching element that you learn as you go and experience these moments as a coach, and you know the players have gone out there and done what they can. So all you can really do is just get around them, and you know I usually go and after those sort of situations go and shake the player's hand and you know head up, keep your head up. You know, like the thing is you're no worse a person. This is the challenge for young players, is you are the same person you were before the game. It's just a situation that's occurred to you. So it's really important that you keep that confidence with the player. They are the same person. I know it sounds silly, but a lot of players, especially early on in their careers, judge how they are by how they play or who they are. And so it's football and rugby is what you do, it's not who you are. Yeah. But as a young player, sometimes when you're starting off, you think that your rugby is who you are. Yeah. And so it's really important to keep reminding them that rugby is rugby, who you are is more important. And as a coach, you're appealing to the who are they? Make sure they're okay. Get their confidence up. Because once you accept that where you're at and you can help a player hold their head up and walk around, be the person you were before the game. Yes, this has happened to us. Yes, you're disappointed. But you're not going to be a different person now that you've had a loss. It's the same when you have a big win. Yeah. It's the same thing. Because it's a trap for young players. They'll have a great win and they'll walk around like, this is who I am now. Yeah. And it's not. You're the same person you were before the game. And I think as we go and trying to help our young men and women, you know, grow into professionalism, it's understanding that irrelevant of the result, you're still the same person, and it's more important we look after that person.
Well, in our first year, in 2022, we had 12 out of 14 losses. Was it hard getting that message into the boys, you know, loss after loss, match after match?
Yeah, it is. I mean, our guys can move on pretty quickly. Yep. Which is good. But it was also important to make sure that at the end of the game they didn't feel. We had to make sure our players felt like they belonged in this competition, and they did. And we've shown this year we've improved enough to make a final. So our next challenge, as we've talked about, is next year and growing from where we are now. But we've progressed through, and it's progressed through by helping our players believe in that they should be here. And so sometimes after a big loss, it's like, oh, well, but again, it comes back to who you are as a person. Yeah. Let's stay confident in ourselves. Let's be who we are. Yes, we're disappointed, but make sure that we get on and get done what we need to do. Get our recovery right, number one. So that was the big thing about helping players come out of moments like that, was we have to get ourselves ready for next week. And that starts, I know this sounds a little bit ruthless, I suppose, but our preparation for next week starts after the game. Doesn't mean we don't enjoy ourselves at night, but our preparation for next week is starting. So we don't overdo the celebrations. We've got to do our recovery, ice, all that stuff, and they're the things that I think a lot of people, for us, when we chat to people, they sort of appreciate some of that off-field time that where the professionalism really benefits our players. So it's just helping them overcome the disappointment. But the big thing was believing in themselves and believe that they belong, especially early last year. And after a loss, it's a little bit harder to do that. But as I said, our boys, they
move on pretty quickly.
They move on pretty quickly.
Now, does a type of loss better, Mick, in how you handle? It's like a big loss, like we had against, say, the Hurricanes and the Crusaders year one, versus some closer losses where we should have won the game, like the Reds game in the first year, for example.
Yeah.
Does that? The principle is the same, isn't it? After a loss.
Yeah, I think for as a coach, you know that you get a bit of time to think about a loss like the Crusaders one or the Hurricanes one, when you're 50 points down with 20 minutes to go. You sort of realise, well, I don't think we're going to win this. So you sort of understand, whereas players finish the game, and as soon as they finish the game, it hits them that that's a pretty disappointing performance.
Right.
And as a coach, you're looking for answers, and the challenge is to go in and I've made this mistake, is to find the answer then, because of you're trying to say what's happened here. What have we got to do right? But you just got to keep peeling back and accept that we'll get on with it. Tomorrow we'll get on with it. We'll start tomorrow and we'll start the process again. Today, let's just rebuild ourselves, stay confident, head up, walk around like we belong here. So sometimes as a player, that it comes to you when the final whistle, and you've just got to realise, it's disappointment. It's a challenge for all of us in that first year. We're all questioning how things were going. We were based at Lennox, which was a beautiful part of the world, but we're away from home, and so there was a lot of challenges for us. But I think that really helped us grow together as a team as well.
Now, one more point before we move on to obviously the big game for Fiji in the weekend. But conversely, we're looking at the Wallabies, talking about the Wallabies, but conversely, Wales, their performance, are they back? Has Warren Gatland turned this team around? What do you reckon? What do you make of their performance?
Well, I think Gats is. Gats is a great coach, and I like Gats. I like his personality. He's just.
He's a typical Kiwi sort of.
He's great. I really enjoy. I really enjoy his company, and when he's gone back there, he hasn't tried to do anything other than take Wales back to the way he knows that they can play. And he's done that well. He's got them fit. Every team that Warren's coached, he's always focused on getting them fit, and so they're rugby fit. But they're just playing a game that suits them, and they're carrying the ball well. They're playing well through their 10. They lost Dan Bigger early in the game. And then, Gareth Anscombe comes on.
Who you know well.
Yeah, look, I've known Gareth since he was 16 years of age, So, he came on and it was seamless, because Gats has them playing a style of footy that everyone's on board with. everyone understands their role. So when Bigger went off, it wasn't like a player comes on and what am I doing and what am I doing here? He just came on and straight into what expected of the Wales team. And Gats has been very good at that over the years and getting not predictable, but a really composed team that all playing on the same page, so to speak. And everybody knows their roles, and they did that really well. And unfortunately for Australia, they were still trying to find their way. And they came up against a team that was really confident in the way they wanted to play, and they just stuck to their task.
Good variation in their tries. The first try, sweeping move, a bit of deception there. One try for chip kick, one try for maul, or a line and drive. It looked like a complete performance from them.
Yeah, I think the first try, that may have come from a bit of homework around, the number 7 for Australia not being probably his normal starting position, if you like. He's probably a bigger guy that's suited to the other side, but he plays really well, and he's got a big future. Tom Hooper, he's got a big future. But whether it was his job or whether it was the guy, pushing from that inside, and it was a well move because it was a well worked move because the players that usually come in that there are a back, but it was actually the 7 that came in. So it's probably well done because if you're looking for the winger to come in, the winger's gone around, 7's come in on the short ball. I remember the Waratahs used to do it really well with hoops. It was something.
Because he had the speed, obviously. Had the speed.
Yeah,
You
something
that
Czech
to get over there.
Czech used to like doing with hoops, and it was a good, well worked move. Little chip kick through, good planning, good thinking. So but everybody's on the same page. When things like that happen, it's not happening out of impulse. It's happening because it's part of the plan. And you're right, they did. And
you can practice it, all you like, but to pull it off in a game, well, it must have been especially pleasing for them.
Oh, you could see in their faces when they scored.
They
knew it was a pre-called move that they were ready for, and when it came off, they were all pretty excited by it. So it's good.
All right, now on to the most important game of the weekend is to come. We have never been in a position where, with one game to go, still you can on game 3 we can secure a quarterfinal. The opportunity presents itself Sunday, Fiji time, 3:45 a.m. The team lineups announced. Let me run through it very quickly. Irani Maui, Sam Matavesi, and Lukatangi in the front row. Our boys, Ea Isoa, Hanasila Sila, and Big Tehiwaru. Drikidaveta, we stopped calling him big anymore. He's not as big as he used to be.
No, he's still Big T though. He plays big. He's it's really impressed. I'm really impressed to see him and what he's done. Last year to this year to making that team and being a very dominant player in a very good Fijian side. It's great to see. And
starting at lock, starting at that crucial number 5 lock position when he's versatile and he offers so much in different positions. That must be particularly pleasing for you. I'll finish the lineup, but let's talk about Big T.
Yeah, look, it is pleasing. I mean, for us, he plays 5 and 8.
Yeah.
He gives us that option. We know he's got a big motor. What he's been able to do is to increase his speed around the field. We know he can go, but he's been able to increase his speed around the field. He got, as we talked about before, great turnover on the line there against the Wallabies to get us the ball back. And I think for me, when you look at how he's improved, or what he's doing now is he's reaching what everyone's seen in him here. But it takes the hard work of the player. You know it's in there. You know he's got it, and you encourage it out. But when you see him work that hard, he's getting the rewards because of the hard work. It's really pleasing.
It's brilliant. We'll talk a bit more about Big T in a second. But then you look at 6, 7, 8. It's Tangi Valu, who's just done extremely well in this tournament. Obviously, Levani Boti. I think there's no more superlatives to describe him. And Bill Mata at number 8. Then you got the Drua 9s and 10s. You got Simi and Teddy calling the shots. 12 is Big Josh. The captain Weiss at 13. Then on the left wing, Semi on the 11, and making his return to the matchday 23 is Superstino
Yeah.
in the 14 with our man Ila. And we'll talk about a couple of these players in a second, Mick. But let's go back to the 9 and 10 combination. And if we look at the whole team, it's a big statement to say absolutely not taking Georgia lightly, want to maintain the momentum. And obviously, it was an injury. It could have been injury enforced, but Stino is fantastic and very able replacement at 14. What do you think of the starting 15?
Well, I think it's a great call. It's difficult. Look, you're in a World Cup. You take away a squad of 33. It's a tournament that's a knockout tournament. So it's not like a normal November series where you can take players away and give them a test match to give them experience. You need to win. You lose a test match here, you're out of the tournament. Yeah. So you know sometimes you get a draw where we could have had, for example, the draw could have been Wales, Portugal, Australia, Georgia, and therefore you put your best team out against Wales. And you've got other guys there you want to give a game to see how they're going and adapt. And you might say, well, that's a game we can rest a couple of our big minute players, get a couple of our good young players in there against Portugal. Then we can go again against the Wallabies. What happened this draw was we had our 2 big games to start with, which we've done great work in. We put ourselves in a position. Now we've got Georgia, and we're in not a must win, but as you said, if we win this with a bonus point, we're in the quarterfinals. Yep. So it's just, we've got to pick our best team. Yep. We've got to pick our team that has been performing. And we've got to do that because we need to win that with a bonus point to get in. We can then say, like if we win against Georgia and we don't get a bonus point, Australia will get a bonus point against Portugal, unless something bizarre happens there. So then we're going to have to beat Portugal in the last game. Yeah. So therefore you're carrying in your last week. You get to the last week. Do we give some of these young guys a chance? Because, we might get an injury or so. Yeah. But then you're like, we've got to win this game. Yeah. Whereas if we can do the job on Sunday morning, then we can play some of our squad players that have been over there working really, really hard, that are knocking on the door, that deserve a chance. And we can give our big minute players a bit of a break going into the quarterfinal. It works perfectly for us if we do the job on Sunday.
Would you have picked this as your preferred run of matches if you had a choice? With hindsight, obviously.
As a coach, you would, because it just gives you the chance to go bang, 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 and keep your team going well, keep your good side going, because you want. And I think it's a credit to the coaches that, we're not hearing any rumblings of any problems that you hear in some camps, where players aren't getting a game and they're not happy. Our camp is a happy camp.
Oh yeah, there was a video of them singing it.
And everyone's behind each other, and it's being well led by Simon, and that reflects on him as a person as well, how he is and how he cares about people. And because the way Simon cares about people, he'll be aware of the 10 guys that aren't playing weekly. He'll be looking after them and keeping them going. So we get an opportunity to put our best team out 3 weeks in a row, combinations right, etc. From a coach, that's ideal. Yeah. From a fringe player, you'd like to be there and playing. But I think if the squad's managed well, the fringe players realise, hey, I'm part of this. Yep. And we're going there. And we do, as I said, we do the job on Sunday, and some of those players will get their run the following week.
Right. We're looking at the impact, looking at the bench. Tex at 16, Penny Ravai backing up as loose head. And the other big story of the announcement is Samu's potentially set for his Rugby World Cup debut.
Yeah, that's awesome. Again, one of the squad members we're talking about, he said there's just as many scrums at training as the starting guys. He would have done just as many miles and just as many lengths, and probably later in the week trained a little bit harder than some of the other squad to keep his fitness up. So, it's been a long haul for him to, be training and putting in, and now he gets his chance, and really looking forward to seeing, be a great moment to see him come up off the bench and get onto the field.
You worked a lot with Samu. He was injured at back end of 2022. and then he had an off season before 2023. What was it like working with him, getting him back to the fitness after his injury recovery?
Yeah, it's a tough gig. The big players, especially the tight five guys, they're big men, and when they get an injury and they can't run and they can't keep themselves going and they can't keep ticking over, it's a tough gig for them when they start coming back. And you just got to keep encouraging them to keep working hard. But it's a bit of a cruel life, really, because what the injury has caused them to go backwards, and to go forwards you've got to push them harder and harder and harder. So sometimes you've sort of got to be cruel to be fair in those instances, and you've got to really drive them hard. But at full credit to the players, they see the benefit in doing the work. They don't enjoy it at the time, but they sit back later and they reflect, and they understand they've got to do the work. But it was tough for Samu at the start. It was tough for all the players when you're coming back from an injury, and so it's great to see that work that he was putting in, that hard yards he was putting in those early days coming back from the injury, and getting himself to a position now. It's the same for Simi, but Simi's not carrying the weight that Samu was carrying, and when Simi started getting fit and started running around, he was in reasonably good shape. Whereas the big fellas up front, they're carrying a lot more weight to get around the park.
Particularly on the knees and the ankles.
That's right. So it's great, and it's just great to see him out there.
All right, we've got Temo backing up for the locks. We've got Big Albert backing up for the back row.
Another big man.
Yes, right. It must be such a good thing to have such really, really good players on your on your reserve bench, right? I mean, someone like Albert, a regular starter for his club.
You see last week when he came on, the Wallabies players must look up, and the guy coming on was bigger than the guy that just went off. It's like, wow.
And he's fresh.
And he's fresh, and he's going to come, and he did too when his first carry. He was like, wow. So look, I think it's a powerful bench. Tex is the same. He's a powerful runner. He's an explosive player. That's a good bench.
Gets you that go forward, right? When Tex and these guys, when you need it, and Tex has this amazing ability to break or keep pushing past the first contact, doesn't he?
He does. He's got a lot of energy. He's got a lot of explosive power. He's a big man, but he's got explosive power, and that allows him to do that. He gets a little bit of footwork. He pokes his head through a little gap and keeps his legs pumping and gets through. So, and his will to do that as well. His will to break tackles is strong.
Just refuses to go. He just refuses to just surrender.
Yeah, and it's a great quality.
The ever reliable Frank backing up Simi in the halves, and then you got Vilimoni Botitu for the insides, and then Hambosi covering the outside backs. It's a very good match day 23.
It's a great match day 23, and as we said, that's what we want. Be great to be able to give some guys a run, but it's just the way the draw is, and it's a World Cup, and everyone understands it's a World Cup, and we get the 5 points on Sunday. We push ourselves into a quarter final, and it's just a great place for us to be. I know with the coaches, Simon and Jacko working around the attack stuff, especially, they'll make sure that we stick to our discipline game. I'm not discounting Georgia at all, but if we get our fast ruck ball, which we've been working really hard on, and we get our discipline, we're able to hang on to the ball, and we get around the corner quickly, and we're able to recycle that ball quickly, we're going to cause Georgia some trouble. And if we get a couple of early scores on the board, I'd like to think we just stay at that system, stick in the system, keep going forward, keep playing that, and the tries will come, rather than trying to get a little bit loose and start throwing the ball around. I'm pretty sure Simon and Jacko will make sure that doesn't happen.
Yeah, because there's one word for nightmare in Fijian, and that word is Uruguay from 2019. I mean, and I don't want to, and I hate saying that.
Another Fijian word to learn.
That's right. The Fijian word for nightmare is Uruguay from 2019.
Sure.
And you just don't want to get into the sense of, we've done the job, we've got a couple of tries on the board, because the Georgia will keep coming, won't they?
Oh, they definitely will. And but I said, as I said, with Simon and Jacko, from the attacking perspective, they'll have a really good system in place. We'll have worked hard with the boys And I think there's some maturity in that squad. You know, our Northern Hemisphere leaders have been doing a great job. You know, we've been talking a little bit about we've got 18 players from Drua in that squad, and that's been great, and it has been good. There's no
19
question.
now. Sorry.
19,
yeah.
So, you know, it has been good, and it has worked well. But it's when you look at the performance of the team, it's those Northern Hemisphere boys that have stood up every week and led the way, so that our less experienced players are able to see, I'll follow these guys through this. I'll follow these guys, and they've been really well led by our Northern Hemisphere boys, if you like.
Two of our success stories from the 2023 season, especially when you compare it to the 2022 season, Stino and Ila. Let's talk about how did you manage to get Stino? Everyone knows his capability and his speed. How did you get him to be so much more confident in his second year? And he got those amazing plays for us. You know, he's scoring at the right time, just fantastic kick chase. How did you get that in Stino?
I think it's in Stino. It's in a lot of our players. It's helping them understand how they get it out of themselves. Okay. You know, and what I mean by that is by training hard, by recovering well, by looking after yourself off the field, so that every week you turn up, you're getting better. Sometimes those players, it's in them, but they play and then they don't look after themselves after the game. They don't recover well. They don't get good sleep. They don't eat well. They turn up Monday and they're sore from the game, and they can't train really well Monday, and so it takes them to Tuesday or Wednesday to get going, and then come Thursday we're preparing for another game, and if you do that 4, 5, 6 weeks in a row, suddenly you fall off the cliff. Yeah. Whereas if you help the players understand, get your recovery in, wake up Sunday, refreshed, good sleep, good food, come in Monday, hydrated, ready to go, and train well on Monday, you get better. And then you get better the next Monday, and you get better the next Monday. So each week you're getting better. It needs the player to do the work. The talent's in there already. We know that. That's why we selected them. Right. That's why we bring them in, because we see that they're a very good player. But for it to come out, you have to help them understand how they get it out. How do I become a consistently good player where I can express my talents every week? And for us, it's about helping them understand what that looks like off the field. You play a good game, you get up and make sure Monday you are the same player you would be if you played a bad game. Because sometimes you see young players will come in after a bad game, and they'll look after themselves. They'll come in Sunday and they'll be sweating in the gym, and they'll do their recovery, and they'll be first on the training track on Monday, and they'll be doing everything they can to get back. And then you'll see they come after a really, really good game. Yeah. The Sunday they've had a big night out. You know, they've come in a bit lethargic. Monday they're sort of, floating around the session. They're not in there. They're not sharp. You know, it's helping them understand. Each week you start again and you prepare. And to be fair, that's something that Stino excelled at. He really bought into, I've got to look after myself, I've got to get myself right, come in on Monday and start again. And he did that, and we're seeing some really good results from that sort of effort from him.
Ila is among the top leaders in the tournament for post-contact meters. He's got a good kicking game. I know you're not surprised at his performance, but you must be really happy with how he's going.
Yeah, all of us here are not surprised because we know how good he is, and he's I don't know, they call it the ghosting run. When he runs across the field, he's just sort of gliding across the field, and he finds a little gap and he runs through it. He has a real strong ability to do that on counter. Yeah. And he's just applying himself more. That's the thing with Ila.
He's focused, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure if the boys keep telling me it's an Andro thing. I'm
not of course sure. It is. Of course it is an Andro thing.
I'm not sure if that's the case, but he's really applying himself.
Double college.
Yeah, he's really applying himself well, and I like it when they kick the ball to him and he's in the backfield. He catches the ball and he's got 20 or 30 metres. Yeah. And he starts to head off on a run. He's going to find the space.
He's seen something.
He's seen something, and he's going to head there and he's going to ghost his way across, and he'll beat that first tackler. And it's an impressive skill. Yeah. And again, like Stino, he's worked hard, and there's a lot of upside in Ila as well. And in his second year for us anyway, having started at the Reds.
The Reds, he's got 2
come back
seasons
here, and now he's played a World Cup, and he's going to come back with some more confidence in himself. And I'm really looking forward to seeing him go over the next couple of weeks, but then more so when he gets back with us.
Yeah, and especially with his big boot as well.
Yeah.
To come back and put it in practice. All right, I think we're just about to wrap it up. Unless there's any questions from the couple of our team members who are managing this out of sight. Angie's going to hand me a piece of paper. There's some folks who decide to spend their lunch hour listening to us.
It is Friday, so they're probably running out of things to do.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So first one, how important will this experience and exposure of the Drua boys at this international level? How valuable will it be for us when they come and run out for the Drua next year?
Well, I think if you say invaluable, I think we're saying that means it's so valuable you can't put a price on it. It is going to be enormous for us because these boys, these young men have been in amongst good coaching, good playing, a high pressure tournament, big crowds. I mean, we got feedback from the France game they played, how overawed some of our players were by just the noise and the crowd. Having those experiences, just to feel the confidence of that, saying, I can handle this, I can actually handle this environment, and the confidence to play the way they play. And also when you go in and test yourself against teams in the world you don't normally come across, and you find, you know what, I can deal with this on the global stage. When you come back to your own little fishbowl existence here in Super Rugby, you've handled it on the global stage. You know, you've played Wales. You know, you've played England. You've played France. You know, and
world-class players.
World-class players. You come back to Super Rugby. I can do this. So I think it'll be invaluable for us, this experience.
Okay. Next question is about the announcement of the squad for next season. And obviously we're going to announce the whole squad at some point in November, as per the competition guidelines. The question was specifically about signing locks, which we obviously won't name names yet because we want to keep some surprises for November. But you're happy with the overall? You've locked in the squad now, Mick. You're happy with the spread across the different positions?
Yeah, absolutely. We've added a couple of players in. That's given us some good balance across the park. We've got some players that are developing well. You know, a couple of locks with the Flying Fijians are gaining invaluable experience, as we said. There it is again, invaluable. Experience on the world stage. They're going to come back more confident. You know, the belief in themselves. You know, this is the thing. So that balance around that is going to be great. And you know, we've added some strength in our backs, which gives us a little bit more depth there. So, you know, coming to start our third year, our squad on paper has improved quite a lot, and we're really excited by that.
How much does experience matter if you're in a game and about, say, 18 to 20 points behind? Crucial not to panic at that stage, but just to keep on going through the paces. Talk a little bit about what's needed at that point in the game, maybe 60 minutes in, you're 18 points down. How does this experience help?
It's a great question, and it's probably one of the key things you want to work with your experienced players and all your players when they're in that situation, is to focus on the role and job. It's boring. It's a boring answer.
Right.
But you just want your players to focus on the next job. You know, the last thing you want players to worry about is, what if we don't score? What if we don't get the next try? What if we lose? What if I don't? You know, and all the what ifs come into play. What you want them thinking about is, where's the ball? What's my next job? You know, if it's to win the line out, if it's to make a tackle, if it's to catch the pass and run with some footwork, what's my next job? And it's, you know, it's not cliched because it's fact. It's just reality. If you focus on your job and you get your work done and you get your next job done and you do it as best you can, and you have success at that, and you have success at next job, and your success at the next job, the scoreboard will take care of itself. But if you start looking at the scoreboard, you know, that's when you can get into trouble. And that works from when you're 20 points up as well.
Yeah, right.
You know, and so it's rather boring, but it's not boring, but it's rather boring answer in that you just got to keep doing, you just got to get up and do your next job.
Right.
We don't know what that next job's going to look like, and that's the fun of the game. But the next job might be there's a knock on and you pick the ball up and you've got it and you don't expect to have it. Have some fun with it. You know, that might be your next job. So yeah, it's just about a matter of staying in that line, and then if you can get your 20 points up on the board, and go after it, you know, and want the ball and want to score points and keep saying we'll get there. And we've done that a couple of times. You know, we've fallen short. I think about our last game against the Chiefs.
Oh yeah.
You know, in the first year, you know, we were written off, you know, against the Reds in their first year at Ballymore and at Suncorp.
Yeah.
And you know, Vots goes through and you know, just a little offload.
Yeah.
Out to Mbossi, you know, we score, and then all of a sudden we score again. And
Joe Tamani with a great pickup.
And score, and then all of a sudden you're like, dude, the game's there. So we have a side that can do that. So we need to keep focusing on the next thing. What's going to happen to us next? Yeah. So when you're in those situations, that's what you want. And the experience of our players going through that now. Yeah. Will help them understand that just to stay in the game, always stay in the game. Yeah.
So one more point about the Flying Fijians before we wrap, but the 10 who don't make it to the match day 23, how important is their role in match week in getting the match day 23 prepped? I mean, you don't know obviously until the Wednesday or the Thursday, whether or not if you're playing on Saturday. Yeah. But if you're not in there, but what are they doing in training that keeps the sort of the regular starters honest?
Well, each environment's different. I'm not sure what the Flying Fijians were doing, but would be pretty similar to what we were doing, you know, and most teams would do. You would probably get to the end of the week and you have your starting team go out and play the game we want to play. Yeah. And you're asking the other players to be the opposition. Yeah. So these are the sort of plays we think the opposition are going to run at us, run these plays. This is the way they're going to defend like this. And what you want from those players is to be 100% committed to being the opposition that day. Forget about the disappointment of not playing. Yep. Move on to your job, and your job today is to be, so for example, you know, today over in France, you would expect that the non-23 players are being the best Georgia team they can be. And they're throwing up all the questions that Georgia's going to throw. They're defending like Georgia will defend, so that the starting team can look and go, that's what that feels like. I'm ready for this. So when it comes out on Sunday morning, I've seen this before. I've dealt with this before. If that happens, then that team, they deserve the victory as much as anybody. Yep. Because they have allowed the starting team, they've allowed that starting team to have all the confidence to go out there and be who they want to be. So if they sook around and they don't get involved and they drop the ball and they fumble and the players never get asked the questions they're going to get asked in a game, right, then all of a sudden on Sunday it's the first time they're seeing it. Yeah. It's like takes them back a bit. Yeah. So I think that, you know, that's what you want from those players, and I'm sure, and you know, what I'm hearing is that our players there are doing a great job like that.
Yeah, Meli, Mira, Cyril Mangala for the European base. They must be asking those questions.
Yeah, they'll be, and what great players to be asking questions. Yeah, right. Know? So it's awesome.
All right. Last word before we go. There's another big game happening this weekend in a different code, but one you're very familiar with. It's grand final on Sunday. The Brisbane Broncos are trying to stop Penrith's, what is it, the fourth in a row or third in a row? Something?
Well, you got the Bronx, yep.
And then it's Penrith.
Yep. And you've got Brisbane AFL.
Then you've got AFL, right,
so
of course.
You've got Brisbane. You've got Brisbane. The Brisbane people have a great weekend coming up. Yeah, look, I think Penrith. I like Penrith. Mm-hmm. You know, I like the way they play. I've known Ivan since he was a player at Manly. Used to play cricket with him, cricket against him in the park, and when we were younger. But and you know, I just like the way that they go about their business, and it'd be good. They'll make history if they can get up. Mm-hmm. But the other side of it for Kevy Walters and the Broncos to do what they've done 12 months ago, 18 months ago, it sounds very much like Richmond a number of years ago, when Richmond were in a bit of trouble and they called the coach in and they were talking about changing the coach and they were going to get rid of the coach, and they stuck with him, made some plans, and then he won 2 or 3 premierships. Yeah. The same thing like last year, you know, Kevy was under the pump. They're looking at getting rid of him. They've turned, and he's come out this year and You know, they're in the grand final. So it's similar to a Richmond story of a few years ago. And then you've got, you know, the AFL going at it as well.
Yeah,
so,
that's right.
yeah, it's, I don't know what...
So who are you picking the AFL
Well, I don't
one?
think I'm sleeping this weekend.
That's right.
I think I'm awake. Look, I think I'll go with, I think Penrith will do and I'll go with Brisbane in the AFL. So I'll give Brisbane one win.
One win. All right. Thanks everyone. Thanks Mick. Appreciate your time as always. Thanks everyone for tuning in. You'll find this video living on our YouTube channel and any other platforms that you can link from. But thank you, Mick. And as always, you know, go Fiji, go boys. We're Simon and the team. We're all with you, all watching, and you know, enjoy yourself.